Three men vanished from Alcatraz on a June night in 1962. No helicopter, no outside accomplice, no explosion, no gunshot. Just a spoon. And more than 60 years later, the FBI still doesn't know if they're alive or dead. That's exactly the problem. Alcatraz wasn't an ordinary prison. It was the US government's answer to a very specific problem: criminals who escaped from everything else. Sitting on an island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, cold water on every side, unpredictable currents, and the kind of isolation that was its own punishment. Nobody had ever successfully escaped, not once. Frank Morris was 35 years old, with an IQ of 133, higher than almost every guard watching him. He'd spent his entire life cycling in and out of institutions. He understood exactly how security systems think, and he understood exactly how to fool them. Alongside him were the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, two men from rural Georgia bound together by blood and by something harder to define: an absolute refusal to accept that they were trapped. The three of them ended up at Alcatraz at the same time, and they decided they weren't staying. The plan started with a simple observation. The cell walls were old, built in 1934 with concrete that, over the decades and under the constant moisture rolling in from the bay, had quietly deteriorated. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't obvious, but it was enough. Frank Morris started digging. With a spoon, with nails, with whatever fragment of metal he could hide from the daily inspection. Night after night, centimeter by centimeter. Behind each cell's back wall ran a utility corridor, a service passage that guards rarely bothered to check. If they could reach it, they'd have access to the roof. But there was an obvious problem: inspections. Guards tapped the cell bars twice a day. Any hole would be spotted immediately. The solution was almost too elegant. They built fake heads. Using papier-mâché from old magazines, improvised paint, and real hair collected from the prison barber shop, they created lifelike replicas of their own faces. At night, they placed the heads on the pillows, a body-shaped lump under the blankets. Lights out, and the guards saw exactly what he expected to see: three inmates sleeping. Nobody suspected a thing for months. But that was only the beginning of the problem. Getting through the utility corridor, they'd still have to climb to the roof and descend the outside of the building without being seen. And then, the most absurd part of the entire plan: cross San Francisco Bay in the middle of the night, without a boat. So, they built one. Using more than 50 stolen raincoat ponchos, waterproof, layer by layer, stitched together with improvised needles, they assembled an inflatable raft. They tested the seams with water they'd hidden in a corner of the service corridor. They also built wooden paddles. And here's what makes this extraordinary. All of it was done inside one of the most closely watched prisons in the world, while guards made their rounds, while other inmates slept, while the FBI monitored any unusual movement. Three men were building a boat. On the night of June 11th, 1962, everything was ready. It was a Monday. At 9:30 p.m., the lights went out as always. Guards made the rounds. Three inmates, three bodies under blankets, three heads on pillows. Everything normal. What the guards didn't see: the holes in the walls, the utility corridor, three men moving through the dark with a raft tucked under their arms. Frank Morris went first. He climbed through the service passage to the roof. From the roof, he descended the side of the building using ropes made from braided bed sheets. The Anglin brothers followed right behind, every movement calculated to make no noise, every step measured. They reached the waterline around midnight. San Francisco Bay at night is not where you want to be on a raincoat raft. Water temperatures hovering between 54 and 52 degrees Fahrenheit, currents that shift without warning, visibility close to zero. But they entered the water. The next morning, at 7:15 a.m., a guard knocked on Frank Morris's cell bars and heard nothing. He knocked again. Nothing. He opened the cell and touched what was on the pillow. It was paper. The alarm went off at 7:18. Alcatraz went into immediate lockdown. The entire island was searched. Coast Guard vessels swept the bay for hours. Helicopters crossed the waterline back and forth. What they found? Fragments of the improvised raft near Angel Island, a waterproof packet containing photographs and personal letters, wooden paddles, but no bodies, no human trace beyond the island. The FBI opened one of the longest investigations in its history. They interviewed family members, friends, acquaintances. They monitored bank accounts that were never touched. They tracked identity documents that were never used. Nothing. The official investigation lasted 17 years. In 1979, the FBI closed the case with the most convenient conclusion available: presumed dead by drowning. But in 2013, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Police Department. No identifiable return address, handwritten, signed with the name John Anglin. The letter claimed that all three had survived, that Frank Morris had died in 2008, that John himself had cancer and was willing to turn himself in exchange for medical treatment. The FBI analyzed the letter. They tested the paper, the ink, the handwriting. They reached no definitive conclusion about its authenticity. The offer was never accepted. The person never came forward again. And the case remains open to this day. What Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers proved wasn't that Alcatraz was weak. They proved that no system is ever as perfect as it believes itself to be. That the greatest vulnerability in any security is the assumption that it cannot fail. A spoon, months of patience, and the willingness to enter an ocean at midnight with no certainty of reaching the other side. If this story made you stop and think, there are dozens more like it. Escapes that rewrote the rulebooks on security, heists that should have been impossible, plans so precise they read like fiction, but every single detail is real, verified, documented. Every week, we go deep inside the cases that changed how the world thinks about crime, control, and human intelligence. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the next story, you're not going to want to miss it.